Part 17, Day and Night of Cloud and Rain with Him. The sun shone in obliquely from the window, and warmly imprinted on the body. Xuan Huaifeng was suddenly startled and sat up from the bed. After a while, he calmed down and looked around in shock and suspicion. He doesn't know when he has returned to his usual bedroom, and even changed his clothes. Is it Qijun? The events of last night clearly reappeared in my mind, the blackness of which I could not reach my fingers, but the touch was so vivid and frightening. What happened last night? Was it real, or was it a dream? Xuan Huaifeng's heart was beating wildly. A strange feeling of discomfort from his lower body slid up faintly along his spine. He tried to move his body, and his cheeks suddenly flushed. Not a dream. He breathed a sigh of relief, but the next moment, the smile suddenly solidified again. But is that person really Qijun? Xuan Huaifeng raised his eyebrows and tried his best to recall, but the more he thought about it, the more uneasy he became, and he gradually became more panicked than when he just woke up. He is drunk. He didn't see anything, only touched the other's face. Xuan Huaifeng tried to move his 5 fingers, stretched out his slender fingers and looked carefully. Last night he was so sure that it was Qijun's face, but now, every time he passed, he was puzzled. Did you really figure it out? Qijun didn't even say a word. In this big mansion, if nothing else, there are only 10 or so people. Who can guarantee that there are no people with the same mind as Bai Xuelan? If you want to be sure, the quickest way is to ask Qijun directly. But this thought only flashed in his mind, and it was wiped out by Xuan Huaifeng with a stick. How do you ask such a thing? Qijun, was it you who did that with me last night? If not, what kind of person do you become in Qijun's heart? Even if it is, Qijun must be unhappy in his heart and disappointed with himself. Just imagine how sad and disappointed I would be if Qijun called and asked, Huaifeng, if the one I was holding last night was you. Thinking about it, the sheet on which he was sitting turned into needle felt, and the sting made Xuan Huaifeng's heart numb. Millions of people hoped that last night it was X-Trail. Millions were worried that last night was not Qijun. I was really confused. Xuan Huaifeng squeezed his thigh so hard that he frowned in pain. It is said that alcohol is the root of calamity and disorder after drinking, and it really is. If a person is drunk, he can do anything wrong or stupid. How did you fall to this point? Thinking that he might have mistaken someone last night, or that he might have done this with others in a daze, Xuan Huaifeng was extremely suspicious, remorseful, and frustrated. But he couldn't find anyone to blame at all, gritted his teeth, and bit by bit. I pinched my legs, wishing this was just a nightmare, just wake up quickly. Just as he was going down hard, he suddenly heard a knock on the door. Young master, you're up? Zhang Ma asked, pushing the door and entering. The sun is shining on your body. I guess you should wake up too. Put on your clothes, I'll make you hot prunes, vegetable meat buns, and well-boiled millet porridge. The boss guy should eat well, but it's not as good as I know your appetite. What? Xuan Huaifeng's face looked straight. It's alright. Xuan Huaifeng covered it up, got out of bed in a hurry, changed his clothes, and went to the small dining room to have breakfast with his sister and brother-in-law. After a few mouthfuls of porridge, I heard the ringing of the telephone room. Xuan Huaifeng's heart skipped a beat. While holding the bowl, he wondered if it was Qijun. He wanted to have a phone call with Qijun yesterday, but now he has something on his mind. But he felt guilty for a while. If Qijun called, I really don't know what to ask him. To mention or not to mention what happened last night. After a while, the servant came out of the phone room, ran over and said to Xuan Huaifeng, Master Huaifeng, the number of the White Mansion is from an adjutant surnamed Sun looking for you. Xuan Huaifeng had no problem with adjutant Sun, so when I answered the phone, It turned out to be asking him for help on official business and urging him to come back early. Xuan Huaifeng also understood that this time it was time for the release. And he promised to return after breakfast. I came back and ate a steamed bun on the table, and another servant trotted in from outside. Master Huaifeng. Some soldiers outside said that their superior sent other errands this morning. They're afraid of delay, so they want you to get on the bus quickly. They'll escort you back to the mansion. Xuan Dian laughed. This urging gesture is really scary. A phone call for a while. A soldier for a while. Can it be that Chief Pai can't be without a new adjutant for a moment? It's even enough to ask people to have a peaceful breakfast and don't eat well. Although she complained, her expression was quite relieved. Looking at Huaifeng with a smile as he finished drinking the millet porridge in the bowl, Xuan Dian nodded and said, Go, don't let Chief Pai wait, it turns out to be something to do. And you have to do it seriously. She came over, helped Xuan Huaifeng straighten his collar, and sent him out. Zhang Ma hurriedly picked up a few big buns, wrapped them in paper, held them, and stuffed them into the car. Several people watched Xuan Huaifeng's car go majestically away under the guard of several soldiers, and then returned to Nian's house with a smile. When they arrived at the White Mansion, Xuan Huaifeng asked, and Adjutant's son happened to be out on business. Xuan Huaifeng estimated that Adjutant's son was not in a hurry to find him. But he just urged him to come back early, so he went back to his room and picked out a thick document related to customs and taxation. This kind of document is usually very boring. Fortunately, he is a mathematician, and he can bear his temper. Write down everything that is unclear, and wait for Adjutant's son to come back and ask. At noon, a servant suddenly came to the room and conveyed, Adjutant Xuan, the chief is back, please come to the study. Xuan Huaifeng could only go to the study, inserted into the corridor from the garden, far from the window. I saw the figures in the study moving slightly, but there were two people inside. He stopped to take a look. One was naturally Bai Xuelan, and the other was tall and slender, much like Bai Yunfei, who he was very reluctant to meet now. Bai Xuelan didn't know what to hand to Bai Yunfei when he moved suddenly, reflecting a dazzling golden light. Xuan Huaifeng was too far away to see it clearly. Xuan Huaifeng deliberately avoided Bai Yunfei and waited behind the rockery. After a while, Bai Yunfei walked out of the study as if he was in his own home. He wore a brand new gold-edged high-end watch on his wrist. It matched the suit on him very well, and went briskly. Xuan Huaifeng came out from behind the rockery and entered the study. You're back? Bai Xuelan asked when he saw him come in. Is your elder sister okay? I thought you would be reluctant to come back, but I didn't expect you to be self-conscious. With a gesture, Xuan Huaifeng sat down and looked up and down. Looking down, it seemed that on the day it was delivered to the New Year's house, Xuan Huaifeng would have lost a few tails of flesh on his body. Xuan Huaifeng said indifferently, Can you not be conscious? Adjutant's son called to urge me, and the guards were arguing with the escort again. If I leave later, I'm afraid there are other tricks to use against me. Bai Xuelan didn't seem to understand. Those guards are so bold. How dare they make trouble at your sister's house? Don't be angry. I'll turn around and punish them severely. Xuan Huaifeng hated Bai Xuelan playing this kind of rogue shadowboxing with himself the most. With a hint of annoyance on his face, he pressed the fire and said, Not only they are bold, but also they are terribly domineering. They looked at the door in the middle of the night, and even took care of me when I left the door. What are they doing? What are you doing out of the door in the middle of the night? Xuan Huaifeng was speechless for a while. After a moment of silence, he pursed his lips and turned his face away. The smile on Bai Xuelan's face deepened slightly. but it was a calm smile, hiding a very dangerous taste. Okay. I kindly asked you to visit your sister, but you quarreled with me as soon as you came back. In this case, I really don't know if you will not be able to go back in the future. He feebly smiled and threatened. Without waiting for Xuan Huaifeng to talk back, Bai Xuelan changed the subject and asked easily, I heard Adjutant's son say that you have been working very hard recently. Tell me, what have you learned? Are there any problems? Xuan Huaifeng is willing to take it seriously. Since you have the salary of others, you will naturally have to do your best. After thinking for a while, Xuan Huaifeng said, I'm new to customs tax. But looking at the calculation method of imported goods tax, it seems a little leaky. Oh? Bai Xuelan asked with interest, what? Leaks? Currently, the tax on imported goods is calculated according to the purchase price. For example, for goods bought from France, the tax is calculated according to the price provided by the merchant to buy the goods from France. Yes. However, this has two drawbacks. First, the place of purchase is in a foreign country, and the government is not easy to control. It is difficult to say whether the real purchase price is as reported by them. The purpose of doing business is to reduce taxes. It is very likely that the price of the purchased goods will be quoted lower. Although there are bills, but each country has its own bills. And there may be wrong bills that are falsely reported and concealed, and the government cannot control other countries. In this way, countries can receive the money will be less. Bai Xuelan showed the deepness of the office work, nodded lightly, and motioned him to continue. Encouraged by Xuan Huaifeng, he continued, secondly, I have heard about smuggling at home before. There is a type of smuggled imported goods that are finally sold in big stores. If they hadn't been caught at sea, the state has no control at all. And when you go to the store to check, they all say that they entered the customs on the right way. The registration of these goods is ominous, the bills are messy. And it is difficult to check if you want to check. He looked at Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan agreed and said, you can see these 2 points, it's not easy. It seems that I have found the right person. In this case, please come up with a useful and feasible suggestion. Let's eliminate these 2 drawbacks. It's worthy of my own business. Xuan Huaifeng put forward his own suggestion on customs work for the first time, and he was not very confident. I just came up with a rough idea. But I didn't fully figure it out. Well, let's hear it. Imported taxes, I think, if the standard of measurement can be changed and calculated by the price of domestic imported products. Then compare. It's easy to grasp. It's all in China, and the bills are different in different places, but the inspection can still be done, at least easier than checking foreign bills. Besides, this way, even if the smuggled goods are successfully transported in, as long as they are sold in the store, they also have to pay a certain amount of tax, which is better than the previous method. It's just what? Xuan Huaifeng smiled slightly, it's just that this is easier said than done. I know that it takes a lot of work to ask all shops to honestly report the goods and prices they buy and sell each month. If you really compete with them, I don't know how much trouble you will cause the General Administration of Customs. If you don't care, they will benefit. And the country will suffer. Bai Xuelan silently admired his rare natural smile and watched it for a while, then raised the corners of his lips, and said slowly and confidently, don't worry. If the General Administration of Customs doesn't cause trouble, it will not be the General Administration of Customs. I am sitting in this position to find those profiteers who are not happy. Yes. Now, I'm worried about you. Xuan Huaifeng wondered, what are you worried about for me? Bai Xuelan snorted, the Lin family specializes in the business of imported products. Qi Jun knew about the ideas you brought up, so be careful with him. He'll be angry with you. Xuan Huaifeng's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, as if he had been stabbed by something. He was a little startled. Seeing his reaction, Bai Xuelan knew that he was really focused on business just now, but he really forgot that annoying Lin Qijun, and he was so happy that he ate honey. And hurriedly laughed. Just kidding with you. You don't want to laugh at your face, and you make your face harder than me. After a long time, I'm not your boss, but you are my boss. By the way, I have something for you. Leaning over and placing one on the small coffee table in front of him, very delicate wooden box opened. Inside was a metal box with a foreign pattern. And when it was opened, it was covered with a thick velvet bottom and a watch was placed on it. Xuan Huaifeng's family was also rich. And there are several of this kind of thing in the family of high-ranking officers. Judging from the workmanship and the style of the appearance, it is a very expensive watch brought from abroad. The watch that Bai Yunfei was wearing just now was probably what Bai Xuelan handed him in the study. This is for you. Put it on. Bai Xuelan took out the watch and handed it over as if it was a serious matter. Xuan Huaifeng only glanced at it and then looked away. No. Thank you. Don't you like it? I don't need such an expensive thing. Bai Xuelan stared at him for a while, and his smile suddenly turned a bit sharp. I see. You are not happy that I treat the same. I also gave Bai Yunfei one of my watches, didn't I? Xuan Huaifeng was inexplicably provoked by him and gave him a look back. Chief, you are joking. I just don't deserve credit. Bai Yunfei and I have no grudges. What have I to do with him? Bai Xuelan deliberately provoked him and said with a smile, I don't like being wronged, whether you are angry or not. Let me clarify with you first. Bai Yunfei's watch was given by Qijun. I saw that he was wearing it very prominently today. I asked him to take it off and show it to me before returning it to him. However, although his watch is good, it is still not as good as what I gave you. Xuan Huaifeng suddenly startled. For a moment, my heart was sour and spicy, bitter and astringent, and everything tasted. He didn't want to lose face in front of Bai Xuelan and made himself look like a little girl no one wanted. With a hard air in his heart, he turned his face and looked coldly at the pot of roses on the windowsill. The business is over. Can my subordinates leave? I still have more than half of the documents given by Adjutant Sun. Before he could finish the words, the wind suddenly rose in his ears. I don't know when Bai Xuelan went around the small coffee table, and without warning, he raised his hand and hugged him from behind. The tall body was so heavy that Xuan Huaifeng was caught off guard and collapsed on the sofa. Xuan Huaifeng grabbed both hands by him, raised it to the top of his head, unable to move like iron shackles, and asked in shock and anger, What are you doing? What am I doing? Bai Xuelan didn't know what was annoyed. His voice was low, it was a little startling. Say. What is this? The fingertips stabbed the side of his neck. Xuan Huaifeng's back froze. Although I didn't see what was on my neck, I could guess that it must have left some traces last night. Slightly timid, the next moment he became angry again. Ridiculous. What are you? Bai Xuelan, who bullied the weak, took advantage of the weak, and even put on a face of asking for guilt. Xuan Huaifeng, tell me clearly, what did you do last night? Xuan Huaifeng raised his eyebrows. Mr. Bai, I will be your adjutant instead of selling my body to you. What did I do last night? That's my business, it's not your turn to take care of. This was like an admission. When Bai Xuelan heard this, he suppressed his anger, swept Xuan Huaifeng savagely, laughed in anger, and slowly gritted his teeth. Okay, I don't see your ability to entangle with men by coming here for a while. I've made great progress. I'm curious. You. Adjutant Xuan usually has a bigger air than the chief. So why did you suddenly lower your profile? Who has such a great ability to make you so fascinated? Xuan Huaifeng snorted. Do not answer his words. He struggled hard, but he couldn't get rid of his vice-like palm. He simply turned his face away ruthlessly, as if he had no regrets, and let you go. Is it Lin Qijun? Bai Xuelan asked. Xuan Huaifeng gritted his teeth and made up his mind not to speak. Bai Xuelan asked several times, but seeing that he didn't say anything, he didn't get angry as he expected, but let him go. He stood up, clapped his hands as if helpless, and said, "Okay, don't tell me. I'll go to ask him." Xuan Huaifeng was surprised when he saw him turn around and walk towards the phone rack, and grabbed him and asked, "You. What do you want to do? Call Lin Qijun." Xuan Huaifeng pulled his wrist even harder, blushing, and asked, "Why are you calling Lin Qijun? What's in your mind?" Bai Xuelan was at ease at this moment. Smiled and said, "Adjutant Xuan, I'm your boss, and I didn't sell myself to you. Who do I like to call, and what do I like? Can you go to manage it?" Bai Xuelan is very strong and moves very fast. Xuan Huaifeng couldn't pull it several times in a row. Seeing that he was about to pick up the microphone, his eyes were bloodshot, and he stretched out his arms, hugging Bai Xuelan's waist and dragging him back desperately. He worked hard, and finally dragged Bai Xuelan back several steps. Bai Xuelan seemed to be impatient. With a bang, he threw the microphone on the table, turned his head and asked, "You, what do you want me to say about you? I have been talking about being a man all day. Don't be afraid to recognize good things. As the chief, it's my duty to know what my subordinates are like. When you yell at me, you're full of anger. Why do I have to call the Lin family? And I'm shrinking my head as a tortoise?" Xuan Huaifeng knew that he was cornering him, but he couldn't compare to him. He was full of anger and could only suppress it, biting his head and saying, "Okay, just admit it. It's Lin Qijun. How's it going?" Stiffening his neck, he blocked between Bai Xuelan and the phone. Bai Xuelan swept his eyes sharply for a moment, but seemed to see through something, and a disturbing smile slowly escaped from the corner of his lips. "Oh? It's really Lin Qijun? You admit it so readily, I don't believe it. Besides Qijun, do you have a third or fourth beauty outside? No, it's better to make sure." It was right at the point that Xuan Huaifeng was most suspicious and afraid of. Xuan Huaifeng seemed to have a layer of skin peeled off on the spot. His whole body was cold and painful. Qijun knew about this, and everything was over. Immediately, most of the soul flew away, and even the momentum was weakened. Seeing that Bai Xuelan was about to reach for the microphone again, Xuan Huaifeng hugged Bai Xuelan's arm with both hands, took a deep breath, and asked with hatred and fear, "What do you want?" Bai Xuelan's tone was still very hard. "I don't want to do anything. I just want to make a phone call. I am also a human being, and I have the freedom to make phone calls. Pretend you're just uneasy and kind. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Tell you. You can't get any benefit by calling Qijun." Bai Xuelan marinated him like a small fish for a long time. "Seeing that the taste has entered, my heart is so excited as if I have won a grand prize." He slowly returned to the color, looked at Xuan Huaifeng with a smile, and asked in a low voice, "What if I didn't call Qijun? Is there any benefit?" To be able to grit his teeth bitterly and not say a word is a default. The man's hand reached out and touched his waist tentatively. Xuan Huaifeng's entire body froze, and he turned his face in embarrassment. This handsome face of humiliation and embarrassment, and the slender body that was stiff and trembling slightly, in Bai Xuelan's eyes, it was nothing compared to it. Having endured these days, he had long thought that Xuan Huaifeng would not be able to do it. Seeing that Xuan Huaifeng refused to resist, he became even more arrogant and bold. He pulled Xuan Huaifeng into his arms, wrapped his hands around the front, and reached down under his shirt. He moved his 5 fingers affectionately. Xuan Huaifeng trembled as he rubbed his body. His legs and feet were completely useless. He leaned back, and was startled to feel that he was leaning against Bai Xuelan's arms. But he felt angry and gritted his teeth to stand up straight. As soon as the thighs exerted force, the feeling below was suddenly clearer. Where the man's fingertips touched, where he was holding it, how the palms were folded together, and squeezed the top of him a little bit like squeezing toothpaste. Xuan Huaifeng let out a sob-like sound from his clenched teeth. Tightening the back of his neck, his body trembled even more, as if he was swaying. Bai Xuelan was amused and angry when he saw him holding on and refused to admit defeat. He deliberately tormented him slowly and played with the delicate parts. Every time he saw him, he couldn't help it, but he stopped for a moment with evil intentions and let go of his excitement. The one of the balls, on the contrary, caressed the ball that has become heavy. He made Xuan Huaifeng gasp from his nose, and his eyes were wet. He wanted to reach out to solve it by himself. But Bai Xuelan stopped him mercilessly. Xuan Huaifeng could only endure it silently. All the nerves are tied to Bai Xuelan's fingertips, and it is all up to him to manipulate and play. And there is no room for stubborn resistance. So, wanting to let go, going back and forth a few times, Xuan Huaifeng was just as dead as life. Unable to support his knees, he fell back limply. His back rested on his chest, and whispered hoarsely, "Bai Xuelan, don't torment me like this." Bai Xuelan blew a breath of heat on the back of his neck and teased, "So, you are also a glutton? Didn't you just do something good last night? Can't stand it so soon?" Letting out a low laugh, while clasping his slightly trembling waist, he pulled him to the sofa. The zipper of the trousers is pulled down. Xuan Huaifeng turned his head back inadvertently and saw the terrifying crude object exposed by Bai Xuelan. He held his breath suddenly, shook his head and refused to approach. At this juncture, Bai Xuelan would not let him escape anyway. Grabbing him firmly, he said jokingly, "What are you afraid of? It's not that you haven't tasted it. I know, it's just a little uncomfortable at first, but gradually you'll like it." On the sofa, standing upright, he buckled Xuan Huaifeng's waist and tied it around his thighs. "No, no, really no." "Ah." Xuan Huaifeng struggled for a while, but he was still no match for Bai Xuelan's strength. In the end, he was forced to sit on top of him and slowly swallow the huge thing in the body. The hot top of the foreign body held the delicate flesh membrane to the limit. "Ugh!" There was a groan in Xuan Huaifeng's clenched teeth. Bai Xuelan kissed his sweaty neck from behind, and asked softly, "Does it hurt? You are too nervous. Relax a little and it won't be so uncomfortable." Xuan Huaifeng shook his head weakly and refused to speak. The body is getting tighter and tighter, as if it will break if it is tighter. Seeing him asking for trouble like this, Bai Xuelan was helpless. To tell him that doing this would only make the things he was holding happier, and he would definitely be mad at him. Couldn't help but feel annoyed. This guy is really too partial. Why is he so meek and proactive towards Lin Qijun? And he is like the most unforgivable wicked person in the world when he treats himself? Bai Xuelan smiled uncomfortably, held Xuan Huaifeng's trembling waist, and slowly descended with strength. He also knew that Xuan Huaifeng wasn't used to him, so he didn't dare to be too messy. He slowly exerted force. He felt that Xuan Huaifeng shook his head violently in his arms. His thighs were shaking so much that he couldn't hold it anymore, so he stopped for a while. Give Xuan Huaifeng some breathing time, wait for him to feel a little better, and then slowly push down. Xuan Huaifeng was pressed by him little by little, and the thing was getting deeper and deeper into his body, as if he was about to tear his lower body into several pieces. The lips begged in a low voice, "You forgive me. I really can't, I will listen to you for everything else. But this sentence somehow provokes Bai Xuelan. Bai Xuelan's body stiffened, and his voice became deeper. Last night, you were like a fish in water. Why did you just open your eyes and talk nonsense when you met me, Bai Xuelan? Xuan Huaifeng, you really take me for a fool. It's gone. He became vicious, forcing Xuan Huaifeng to swallow himself up to the roots, and even the two meatballs could not wait to squeeze them all into the warm and tender nest. Don't move, Xuan Huaifeng, relying on the strength of the waist, and slammed up and down. The harder Xuan Huaifeng struggled, the deeper and harder Bai Xuelan entered. After a lot of wanton ravages, Xuan Huaifeng made a mess, and he had no strength to even struggle. Bai Xuelan did it viciously once, but was not satisfied in the end, turned Xuan Huaifeng to sit on his lap with his thighs apart, hugged him face to face, and did it again calmly. When he pulled out contentedly and looked at Xuan Huaifeng's absent-minded handsome face, he couldn't help feeling a little guilty again. Bai Xuelan is a person who sits on his words and acts and takes all ideas quickly. Thinking of making up for Xuan Huaifeng, he simply wrapped Xuan Huaifeng's naked body in a suit, carried him back to his room and put him on the bed, talking softly and taking care of Xuan Huaifeng's feelings in every possible way, very gently. He did it for the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time. Xuan Huaifeng was bullied by Bai Xuelan so that he could not survive or die. It's a shame that Bai Xuelan is extremely experienced, obviously full of reluctance, but he is very unsatisfactory in Bai Xuelan's arms. Satisfied,